Welcome to our class today, ladies and gentlemen, on an unusual day. I know that you are used to Wednesday, but unfortunately we had to meet today due to challenges. Actually, I could have postponed to next week, but I know that some of you are writing on Monday, and some of you will be writing in May. So we are forced to disturb your Friday. Forgive me for that. Right. Before we go any further, those who are doing MAC 3701, MAC 3701, we shall have a session, another session on Sunday. We'll start at 10 in the morning. We'll be finishing anytime from 2, 3, I think 2, 3, I think. Those who are doing MAC 3761 is optional. So you attend if you want. But those who are doing 3701, please, may you please attend that session on Sunday. Please attend the session on Sunday if you are doing 3701. But if you are doing 3761, as I said, it will be an optional session. But the recording, I will post it on all the groups. Right. Right. Today, I'm going to look at process costing. Today, we'll be looking at process costing. Right.
Process costing.
Right, process costing. Right, process costing is mainly used when a lot of similar products are produced in masses using a single or a series of processes. So this is used when similar products are produced in large quantities. Sorry. Either in a single process or in a series of processes. Right, unlike the joint and byproduct costing that we talked about, whereby we had different products that were produced in a same process. Now these ones will be similar. So these will be the same products that are produced in large quantities, either in a single process or in a series of processes. So that's when we apply a process costing. So process costing, we mainly apply it if we are producing a lot of units in a process or in a series of processes. Please, you can read some of the theory in your study guide and recommended text. I will only be looking at the main concept so that we can be able to move. Right. Now, the cost of the process. You have to be allocated to the products produced. We need to allocate costs for many reasons. We might need to allocate costs so that we can determine the prices. We can also need to determine costs so that we can control the costs. We can also need to allocate costs so for performance management. There are various reasons why we need to allocate costs. Right. If all units are produced in a process in the same period, and they are started and completed in the same period, it could be very easy to determine the cost per unit. Why? We would simply divide the total amount of costs that we've incurred by the total units produced. Then we find what is the cost per unit. But now the problem is practically in most production processes, there is work in progress. You would find that when we start the month, we already have maybe, let's say, 100 units that are already in the system, which are partly finished. And by the end of the month, we still have about 232 units, which are still in the system, which are partly finished. So the issue is, how do we allocate our costs to completed and incomplete units? We can't allocate the same cost to completed and incomplete units. All right. So in this case, we use what we call the percentage completion to determine the extent to which we can allocate costs. This is the percentage of work done on particular units. So for example, if units are 30% complete, our assumption is that 30% of the work and 30% of the cost will have been incurred at this stage. So for our modules, we assume that whenever they say 30% complete, that means the work that has been done is about 30% of the work that is needed to complete a unit. And 30% of the cost will have been incurred. In our examples, we'll be assuming that most costs are incurred evenly. When they say they are incurred evenly, it simply means that when the process is 10% complete, only 10% of the cost will have been incurred. If the process is 70% complete, 70% of the cost will have been incurred. If the units are 100% complete, 100% of the cost will have been incurred. So when we say the costs are incurred evenly, we simply mean the percentage completion reflects also the percentage of the cost that will have been incurred. Right. There will also be using the concept of equivalent units. Right. This is the equivalent of completed units for the products under consideration. For example, if 20,000 units are 40% complete, the equivalent units will be 8,000. Where is my 8,000 coming from? 20,000 times 40%. Right. We are saying when allocating costs, 20,000 units that are 40% complete they will be taken as being the same as 8,000 units. Because we're saying costs are incurred even. So definitely the cost incurred on 20,000 units that are 40% complete will be exactly equal to the cost incurred on 8,000 units that are 100% complete. So we use the equivalent unit concept to allocate our costs to find out, okay, these goods that are partly finished, we cannot just allocate the same costs to them like those that were completed. So what do? We express them in terms of their equivalent units. So all partly finished goods will then be reduced to their equivalent in terms of completed units. That's what we mean when we talk about the what equivalent unit concept. Then we'll talk about normal loss. These are losses that are expected under optimum operating conditions. That means if our systems are working as we expect, these are losses that are inherent or part and parcel of the nature of the process. That means it's impossible for us not to have such losses. If your process involves boiling, there will definitely be evaporation, which will reduce the liters. That's natural. If you are cutting wood to make desks, there is wood when you are cutting that will be lost. When you are cutting meat in a butcher, in a butcher, it's obvious that there will be pieces that will be lost. There will be weight that will be lost of the meat. That is natural. So normal loss are those losses that are expected if the system is operating optimally. Right. Then abnormal loss. These are losses beyond the normal expected losses. Then abnormal gains, which we rarely find in our modules. When there are abnormal gains, it doesn't mean that you gain. There's no way that you can get more output than the inputs. But these arises when actual losses are below expected losses. Right. Then we've got what we call the wastage point. This is the stage in the production process at which losses are expected. We can investigate our processes and understand the stage at which our loss is okay. Maybe we know that if we are processing a liquid, the boiling stage where we boil the liquid, that's where evaporation takes place. We know that if we are processing meat, the moment that it is in the refrigerators, that's where maybe some weight will be lost. So that stage in our processing that we know that loss is okay, that's the stage that we call the wastage point. Right. So to maybe give you an example, Eugenius Limited operates a process costing system. Sorry, something is happening with my system here. I hope it works. A process costing system. And losses are expected to occur when the process is 60% complete. Right. That's what we call the wastage point. During the period, 30,000 units kgs of input were added into the process. Whilst 4,000 units were in the process at the beginning of the period. And at the end of the period, 6,000 units, 6,000 kg, sorry, were still in the process. That's our closing input. Normal losses are expected to be 10% of the inputs. $24,000 kgs were completed during the period. Determine the normal loss and abnormal loss or gain. Right.
Normal
Right,
loss is
with
expected to
kgs.
be 10%.
Hello?
Normal loss is expected to be 10%. There, Eugene. Please remember to correct it.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying the expected normal loss percentage is supposed to be 10%, not 105.
Okay. Thank you. Typo error. Right. And this 4,000 is supposed to be kgs. Thank you, sir. Right. So here we've got our opening inventory. Opening WIP. We call it WIP, work in progress. At the beginning of the month, we had 4,000 kgs. Right. Then our put into production, which is the new units that were added, with 34,000. This will give us our total inputs, which is equal to right. So that means if there are no losses, we expect to get 38,000 kgs at the end of the month. Because we had 4 at the beginning of the period, then we added 34. So in our system, there were now 38,000 kgs.
Sorry, so wasn't it 30,000 that were put into production?
Hello?
It was
it's
30,000.
30,000, sorry. Thank you. So that makes it 34. Thanks so much. Right. Then there is a normal loss that we expect. Of 10% of the inputs. So we can say 10% multiplied by 34,000 of all these inputs. We're expecting them to be lost, which is 3,400. We're assuming that the opening, we're going to learn at a later stage when the opening WIP might not be included in the calculation of the normal loss. Right. So we know that out of the inputs, we are supposed to lose about 3.4. Then we know that our closing WIP, which is there, we know that there are 6,000 units at the end of the month that are still in the process. So that will give us our expected outputs. So if given the data that we have, we expect to have an output of 24,600. But we are told that our output was only 24,000 units. Then this difference will now be called an abnormal loss. It's a loss because our actual output it's less than the expected output. We're expecting to get 24.6, but we only have 24. So 600 units, they cannot be explained. Maybe they were stolen, or maybe there was wastage. So I think these losses, they result from inefficiencies. Actually, if we just have those losses of 3.4, we can know that it's our normal process, it's expected. But now if they go beyond, now we now have an extra 600 that is missing. That's a cause for concern. All right, when we say abnormal gain, we don't mean that we got more than the inputs of 34. Let's say, for example, if our actual output was 25,000, there could have been an abnormal gain of 4,000. Because we're expecting 24.6. Then if we get 25,000, that will mean that our normal losses are less than expected. So we'll have what we call an abnormal gain. Right. Any questions there? So we prepare the following statements in this topic. Our quantity statement. This determines the quantities of input and the outputs from the process. In terms of both physical units. When you say physical units, we mean actual units and equivalent units. Equivalent units, that's when we also convert the partly finished goods into their equivalent units, as I said before. Whereby we say that if goods are partly finished, we can convert them to how much are they equivalent to in terms of completed units. Right. Then we also have what we call a production cost statement. This determines costs incurred in the process during the period. And cost per unit. So we have so in the quantity statement, it's only about quantities, there's no money there. Then in our production cost statement, then we're now talking about the units produced. Then the allocation statement. This allocates the total cost incurred into the various components which includes completed and transferred, closing with, and abnormal loss. Right. Normal loss products are included into product cost. We're saying they are a normal cost in the production process. So they'll be included in production cost. And the cost related to the normal loss will be allocated proportional to the other products that reached the wastage point during the current period. Right. Abnormal losses are treated as period costs. And not product costs because they arise from abnormal circumstances. And as an expense. This is just an expansion of the meaning of product cost. Those are what we call what? Abnormal losses. Right. So then of course, in addition to those statements, then they can also be the profit statements that we normally have to prepare. So those ones are the special statements that have to be prepared in this topic. Right. So we'll use an example to see how we account for these normal losses and abnormal losses. Right. I will use a question 1, and probably on Wednesday I will do part of question 2. Right. And also you should know that how we prepare some of these statements depends on whether we are using the FIFO or are using the weighted average method. But I think on question 1 I didn't include that part that talked about FIFO or whether they are using weighted average. Okay, so let's do the question and then I will explain the differences. MB was UB's first bakery. This bakery operates process costing system in the manufacturing of savory cheese biscuits, SCB. The SCB's manufacturing process begins with the mixing of the direct raw materials, flour, butter, cheese, and eggs, followed by the kneading of the dough. The dough is then cut into the required forms and baked. The baked biscuits are cooled, packaged into individual packets of 500 grams each, which represent 1 unit of SCB. These units are packaged on pallets for distribution to various supermarkets. Each pallet packs 48 units of the SCB. Right, all the direct raw material required to manufacture the SCB are added at the beginning of the manufacturing process. Right, so it simply means that the raw materials, they are all included at once when the production process starts. There are no raw materials that are added during the process. So what is the implication? It means that even if a unit is 3% complete, the raw materials are 100% done, because they're added when the process is 0% at the very beginning. So when you start production, so that means even if you find a product that is still in progress, all the raw materials will have been added already. Right. Direct labor and manufacturing overheads are incurred evenly throughout the manufacturing process. Direct labor and manufacturing overheads, for this topic, normally we combine them. And these are what we call conversion costs. We call them conversion costs. That is cost of converting our raw materials into finished goods. Right. 1 kilogram of the direct raw material yields 1 kilogram of SCB biscuits. So it's 1:1. That means if we input 1,000 kgs, we expect to get 1,000 kgs of biscuits. Normal losses in the form of broken and rejected biscuits amount to 6% of the direct raw materials added. So 6% of the raw materials will be a normal loss. If we put 100 kgs, we expect 6 kgs to be lost, so our output should be 94 kgs. Right. These broken and rejected biscuits are identified at 80% completion point of the manufacturing process. The 80% is what I called, what you saw me maybe naming as the wastage point. That's the stage at which the losses are expected. All broken and rejected biscuits are sold to bed breeders at 10 Rand per kg. All right. If normal losses are sellable, there are many ways in which we can treat that. But the way that has been used by UNISA is to use this to reduce the direct material cost. They use this to net off the direct material cost. All right, so I will show you. All right, actual information for the month of October 2018 was as follows. This is the actual information. On 30 September, there was 200 kgs of work in process, which was 60% completed. That means there were 200 kgs opening WIP because we were in October here. This one was in September, so that's opening WIP, which was 60% complete. The direct raw material cost included in this WIP was 4,000, and the direct labor and manufacturing overhead was 6,000. 1.3 tons of direct raw materials costing 25 were added into the process. So there were direct materials of 1.3 tons which were added during the current period. So on top of the 200 that we added at the beginning, they topped up 1.3. Then the current direct labor and manufacturing overhead totaled 75,300. 2,200 units were completed in the month. So you can see they are combining units, kgs, but we know that each unit is 500 grams. So we should be very careful there. You can do your workings using grams, or you can work with units. You still get the same answer. Right. On 31 October, 270 kgs of the work in progress were 90% completed. That is at the end of the month. There were still 70 WIP uncompleted units, 270 units. Right. All completed units were sold in the current month at a selling price of 80 per unit. There were no opening and closing finished goods. Right. MB only uses fine wide to distribute the biscuits for the supermarket's central warehouse. The agreement with Far and Wide stipulates a fixed monthly fee of 5,000 plus a cost of 100 per pallet transported. MB's office equipment was bought on 1 August 2015 for 130,000 and immediately brought into use. On this day, the equipment's resale value was estimated to be 10,000 at the end of the useful life. Right. This equipment is depreciated monthly on the straight line method over its 5-year useful life. That's for depreciation. Right. Prepare MB's actual quantity statement. Prepare MB's actual quantity statement. Right. To prepare our quantity statement, let me just show you our quantity statement. Our quantity statement. Let me just first say question 1 so that for reference sake. Quantity statement. October. This is October 2018. Right. Our quantity statement will be divided into 2. Right. On the left-hand side, we've got what we call the physical units. That means the numbers in terms of our physical units. Then on the right-hand side, we've got what we call the equivalent units. Right. First of all, I will use what we call the weighted average method. There's a difference between the weighted average and the first in, first out method. Right. Then on the physical inputs, we have got the inputs, details, outputs. Then on the equivalent units, we have raw materials, then conversion. Right. I would explain to you what all these represent. Right. On the raw materials, we'll have the kgs. You can use units, then the percentage. Then conversion will also have kgs and the percentage. All right, you'll see shortly what they mean there. Right, I've decided to use kgs. You can use units, you still get the same answer at the end of the day. Right. Now we'll start with the input side. Right, we had the opening WIP, which is the units that were in the process at the beginning of the month. We know that our opening WIP was on 30 September, there were 200 kgs in the process. So there were 200 kgs. These were 200. Right. Then, during the period, we then added into the process right. Then we then added 1.3 tons were added into the process. We can then convert them. Remember that we're dealing with kgs. So we can say 1.3 multiplied by 1,000. Why multiply by 1,000? Because in a kg we've got, in a ton we've got 1,000 kgs. So we get 1,300 here. Right. So these were the inputs that we had at the beginning of the process. Then what are we going to get at the end of the day? We'll get completed and transferred units. Then there will also be normal losses. Then we might also have abnormal losses. Then there will be closing WIP. These are the outputs that we expect. Right. Right. So our inputs, our total inputs that we put into the process were 1,500. So we put 1,500 kgs, 200 that were there at the beginning of the month, plus the 1,300 that we added. Right. Then on our output side now, the completed and transferred. Right. At the moment, I will not use what we call the shortcut method. I will talk about it probably in our next class. Right. They completed and transferred. 2,200 units were completed, but these are units. Remember that each unit is 500 grams from here, which represents 1 unit. So let's say to get the completed units, we can say 2,200 multiplied by 500 grams divided by 1,000 to convert that to kgs. What do we get? What do we get?
1,100.
1,100. So these were the kgs that were completed. So it's 1,100. Right. Now, if goods are completed, that means in terms of raw materials, 100% of the raw materials have been applied. So that means the raw materials were applied on all the 1,100. That's the equivalent units. And if items are completed, that means the conversion work is 100% done. Because these are completed. When they are completed, we mean all the raw materials have been applied and all the conversion work has been done. That's why it's 100%, 100%. Then you work backwards, 100% of this, you get 1,100 because they are completed. Right. If units are completed, that means all the raw materials inputs have been added on them and all the conversion work has been done on them. Hence the 100%, 100%. Then our closing WIP. We're told that on 31 October, 270 kgs, which were 90% complete, were in stock. So we'd say 270. Right. In terms of raw materials, it's 100%, even if they are 90% complete. Why? Because the raw materials were added at the beginning of the process. Raw materials are added at the beginning when they were still 0%. That's when the raw materials were added. So this will give us 270. And our closing, that will be 90%, our conversion, because only 90% has been done and conversion is done evenly. All right, so our conversion will be 90%. Right, I think we were told that a direct labor and manufacturing overheads are incurred evenly. So that means if 90% of the work has been done, that means the goods will be 90% complete. Right. Now we then calculate our normal loss. Right. Our normal loss. We know that our normal loss, we're told that it's a 6% of total raw materials. Right. To calculate your normal loss, you say normal loss percentage multiply by total inputs right less opening WIP if percentage completion is below wastage point, is above, sorry. Right, I will explain. Right. Our opening WIP, our wastage point, we know that our wastage point is these broken and rejected biscuits are identified at the 80% completion point. When the process is 80%, that's when they recognize that that's when the losses happen. So if the opening WIP is above 80%, it means that the loss, they've already exceeded the wastage point. So there will no longer be any losses on the opening WIP. That's why we have to take it out when calculating the WIP if it is above the wastage point. It will mean that when it came into this period from the last period, it had already passed the wastage point. So no more losses are now expected on that opening inventory. So we have to take it out when calculating the normal loss because there are no losses on that opening inventory. Right. Then we then subtract closing WIP if percentage completion is below wastage point. Right. So if our percentage completion is below wastage point, then we don't have to include the closing WIP. Why? Because we are saying it is not, it's still there, remember? So it has not yet reached the wastage point. So those units, they should not be calculated. They should not be included in calculating normal losses because they've not yet reached that stage where loss is okay. So that means losses on those closing WIP have not particularly happened at this moment in time. Right. So please, you should be very careful. Your opening WIP, you subtract if it is above wastage point. Your closing WIP, you subtract if it is below wastage point. For the reasons that I said. Right. Our opening WIP. Our opening WIP is 60% complete, which means it is below the wastage point of 80%. So we don't take it out. We only take it if it's above. Then our closing WIP is 90%, which is above our wastage point. The closing WIP will only take it out if it is below. So in this particular case, we are not going to take out the opening WIP and we are not going to take out the closing WIP. So to calculate our a normal loss, that would be the percentage normal loss, 6%, and we're not taking out anything. So it says 6% times the total inputs, which is 1,500. What do you get? 1,500 is coming from these total inputs here. These total inputs. What do you get?
$90.
90 kgs.
Okay.
So that means here our normal loss is 90 kgs. And we know that your raw materials will always be 100% because they're added at the beginning of the process. And then but you know, on the opening WIP, there will be a difference when we do FIFO, you will see that. Right. Then here on the raw materials, that means it's 90 units, which is the 100% times 90. But on the conversion, our assumption is that the losses, they don't pass this wastage point. That's where they identified, and they will no longer go, they will no longer have the other 20% of the work. So your conversion percentage for normal and abnormal losses will always take the wastage point percentage, because we assume that at that stage they are identified, then normal losses will take place after that. Right. So can you say if you say 80% times 90, I think you get 72. Right. Then after taking into account the losses, the inputs and the outputs should be the same. So anything missing here is abnormal loss. If this is more, then there's an abnormal gain. So we can find our difference, which is this minus this minus this minus this. That means So 40 is the abnormal loss. So there are 40 more units that are, we don't know where they are, because we know that our output, remember that 1 kg yields 1 kg. So if our normal loss are 90, we still have 40 missing. That's abnormal loss. In terms of raw materials, that will be 100. Then this will give us 40. In terms of conversion, the abnormal loss will also take the normal loss percentage, which is the wastage point, because our assumption is that there are no more losses after the wastage point. So if we say 80% times 40, we get 32, if I'm not mistaken. Can you correct my mathematics there? 80% of 40, that should be 32. Sorry, I didn't put a figure here. Can you calculate 90% of 270?
Sorry, so can you just repeat that, please?
Yes.
It's
The abnormal
243.
loss, the 80%, where did you get that now?
Then wastage point.
Oh, okay.
It is the same here.
Oh,
As I
okay.
said, that for normal and abnormal losses, use the same percentage, which is the conversion percent,
Always,
the wastage point percentage, which is this one here. For both
Okay.
normal and abnormal losses, you always use this one,
Okay,
the
thank
wastage
you.
point percent, in terms of conversion. All right. So 90% of 270, what do you get?
243.
It's what?
243.
All right. So then here we find our sum. We find our sum. So what we are saying is that during the period, our inputs were the 1,500 kgs. And we applied raw materials on 1,500 kgs of units. And we did conversion work on 1,000, on an equivalent of 1,447 units. Right. So that's what we call a quantity statement. Any questions there? Right. So let's go to the next one. Based on your answer in B, calculate MBC equivalent cost per unit for October. Right. So we normally do this in the production cost statement. Right. In our production cost statement, right, this question we could use what we call the shortcut method, but for now I don't want to teach you that. I will teach you after we've done fifth. We could use what we call the shortcut method. Right, your production cost statement, you will have your here. Now we'll now be talking about costs. We have the total raw materials, conversion. Here we're trying to determine the cost per unit. Right. Then we start with the opening WIP. Right. Our opening WIP, the cost of our opening WIP, we're told that the direct raw material cost included in WIP was 4,000. And the manufacturing labor and manufacturing overheads, which is the conversion, was 6,000. So it was 4,000 and 6,000, which make up 10,000. Right. Then we have current production costs. Our current production costs, we have 1.3 tons of the direct raw material costing 25,100 were added into the process, right? But remember, I said that according to the UNISA approach, there is no standard approach for treating the selling of rejected products. But the UNISA approach that they are using is that any sales of normal losses should be deducted from the raw material cost. So our raw material cost is 25,100. So we should subtract from this amount the 10 rand per unit for losses, right? So we'd say our raw materials on raw material cost would say 25,100 minus our losses are 130 times 10. Where is my 130, my friends? The 90 normal loss and the 40 abnormal loss. The 90 and the 40 abnormal loss. Right. That's the 130. So please, the 130. So 90 normal loss plus 40 abnormal loss is equal to our 130. Right. So what do we get? So if the losses are sellable, you should remember that we deduct for this module, we deduct the cost of the revenue that we earn. It will reduce our cost. Remember that we'll be getting money from the total cost of raw materials. What do we get?
$23,800.
It's what?
23,800.
23,800.
Yes.
So that would be 23,800, the raw materials. Right. And the conversion, the current direct labor and manufacturing overheads are 75,300. So this is 75,300. Then we add our total. Right. Then we get our totals. Right. Then we'll have our equivalent units produced. A quantity statement. Right. In terms of our raw materials, we know that our units were 1,500 here. Remember, this is the raw materials. So the 1,500. So this is 1,500. And in terms of our conversion, the 1,447. Right. Then we get equivalent cost per unit. Find now that one is the total cost. Now we want to find how much is it per unit. Per unit, we would say for raw materials 27,800 divided by 1,500. Then for conversion, we would say 801,300 divided by 1,447. What do we get?
Eighteen, 53.
18.53. Thank you. And the other one?
It's
Thank you.
56,19.
56.19. So that means we are saying on each unit, the cost of raw material is 1853. The cost of conversion is 56 rand 19. And the total cost is 74 rand 72 cents. Right, so that's our production cost statement. So it determines our total cost and what is our cost per unit. Right, so that was the part 2. Then they didn't ask for the cost allocation statement, but let's do the cost allocation statement so that you can see how we allocate costs. Right, first of all, to do our cost allocation statement, we have to calculate the rand value of the normal loss. Actually, for this question, it was unnecessary because we could use the shortcut method, but as I said, I'm not using it now. Of normal loss. Right, our normal loss, we know that it's 90 units. And on the normal loss, our work that we did in terms of raw materials, we did work on 90 units, and in terms of conversion, we did work on 72 units. And we know that the cost per unit is 1853 for materials and 5619 for conversion. So to find the value for normal loss, we can just say raw materials. We know that it's 90 units. So we say 90 kg, so 90 times the cost per kg, 18.53. Then in terms of conversion, we know that we had 72 units, and the cost per unit, we know that it's 18.53. It's 56.19, sorry. So that I don't lose you, please guys, my normal loss raw material cost, raw material units were 90 kgs. And we know that the raw material cost per kg is 1853. Is the 90 times 18.53 here. Then in terms of conversion, our normal loss per, in terms of conversion was 72 units. And the cost per kg for conversion is 56.19. It's the 72 times 56.19 here. What do you get?
Total is 5713.
It's what?
5713.34. Oh, that's the total. Sorry, raw materials is 1668.
Then the conversion?
4045.34.
Right. So that is our value of the normal loss. Right. Then the next stage will be to allocation of normal loss. Right. We allocate separately the raw material portion and the conversion portion. Right. We'll start with raw materials. Right. So it will be allocated to the completed and transferred. Abnormal loss. The normal loss is always allocated to the other products. Right. A closing WIP, we only allocate to closing WIP. Right. So normal loss is only allocated to normal loss to closing WIP if the closing WIP percentage completion is above the wastage point percentage. Like in this case, our closing WIP is 90% when our wastage point is 80. So our closing WIP is above. That means the closing WIP passed the wastage point. That means suffered the losses during the current period. That's why we'll have to allocate the normal loss there. But otherwise, if they are below, it means they've not yet suffered loss. So we can't allocate the normal loss to them. So in this case, we're going to allocate. Right. So we'll take the units in terms of materials, these ones here. Completed and transferred 1.1, abnormal loss 40, closing WIP 270. So it will be 1.1, 40, and 270. So that's 1.1, 40, and 270. Right. Then we get the total here. So excluding the normal loss now. So our allocation, we're going to say for the completed and transferred, we'll say 1,100 divided by 1,410 multiplied by the 1668. This one here. That's the raw materials, remember. We're allocating raw materials. Then for the abnormal loss, we would say 40 divided by 1,410 times 1668. Then for the closing WIP, we would say 270 divided by 1,410 multiplied by 1668. What do we get?
So,
So that we can do.
is
Hello?
this this isn't part of the question anymore, correct?
There's
You are just
somewhere where
showing
we
us
go-
the extra things, but we don't put this if they ask for the calculate the equivalent cost per unit. We don't go down to the allocation and everything. Or do
like as I said that it was unnecessary here, but I'm doing it because I want to
Right.
show you everything.
Thank you.
But there's a part that you would need at the end of the day. Actually, because we could use the shortcut method, there was no need for the allocation of normal loss. There was no need of the calculation of the rand value of the normal loss in this question. But as I said, I'll show you that part at a later stage. Right. So what do we get? Sorry. Let me maybe use Excel here. So this is what we get. Right. Then you do the same for the conversion. We'll have these three again. but the units are going to change. We'll now take these units here, the conversion units. Remember, this is conversion. That is the 1.1, 32, and the 243. Right, we're going to get and remember the amount that we're allocating is the 4045. So we'd say 100 divided by 1375 times 4045. Then here would say 32, sorry, divided by 1375 multiplied by 4045. Then would say 243 divided by 1375 multiplied by 4045. So that would be equal to this. Right. Right. So this is the allocation of the conversion cost. Right. After that, then you can be able to do your allocation cost statement. The allocation cost statement allocates the cost to the various products. So we have right. We'll have our completed and transferred. It will be made up of three costs: raw materials. Right. Our completed and transferred. We know that in terms of raw materials, it's 1,100 units. In terms of conversion, it's 1,100 again. And the costs per unit are 74, 72, oh, sorry, 1853 and 5619. Right, so we can say 18.53 multiplied by 1,100. Then we say our conversion is 5619 multiplied by 1,100. Then we'll have our normal loss allocation. We add the normal loss allocated to the completed and transferred, which is the 1301 and the 3236. So that's 1301 plus 3236. Right, can you give me these values? Can we just be fast so that we quickly finish here? Maybe I can say 1853 times the 1.1 equals to this times this. Then what is the, okay, this one I can also say equal to this one. Right, so this is the value of our completed and transferred. So we're saying the value of our goods that were completed and transferred, the total cost is 86,729. So the goods that were completed and transferred, the total cost is the one that I've calculated there. Right. Then we have the abnormal loss, we do the same. Right, our abnormal loss in terms of raw materials, it's 40. In terms of conversion, it's 32. So we'll say raw materials, it's not, is it 40, the abnormal loss? Yes, that's 40 and 32. So we'll say 40 times 1853, the raw material cost per unit. The conversion will be 32 times 56.19, the conversion cost per unit. Then the normal loss would be the figures that we have here. 47 plus 94, which is this one here, or 47 in the 94. Right. So we get right. Then we have so this will be the value of our abnormal loss. Then we'll have the closing WIP. Raw materials. Right, our closing WIP, remember that it's according to our quantity statement, is 270 raw materials and 243 conversion. So would say 270 multiplied by 18.53, then conversion, say 243 multiplied by 56.19. Then normal loss. So as I said, this normal loss, sometimes it will not be there on the closing WIP if it was below the wastage point. So say 319 plus 715. Right. So then here we'll get then the other one will be equal to, I'm just multiplying the figures here. I'm just trying to do the calculations for you, since I can. I'm just executing what I've already explained. Right. So when you get the sheet, you can also use these formulas to trace where the calculations came from. So left equal to our sum. Right, so this will be the value for closing WIP. Right, so we've allocated. When you're using the weighted average method, it will be assumed that the opening WIP will be part of the completed and transferred because it will have been completed during the period. Right, then we'll have our total cost allocated. Which is equal to this then we'll have our rounding difference. Then actual total cost. So the difference between our cost allocated and our actual total cost is a rounding difference. That is, if you rounded this cost per unit here, there will be a difference. So here we have 109,100. The difference will be the difference between these two here. There's a 2 rand difference. Right, if there is no rounding off, there will be no difference. If you see your difference being so big, that means there's a problem there. Right, so the purpose of the cost allocation statement is to determine the cost of the different components. So we now know that our closing WIP is 19,692. Our abnormal loss is 2,681. Our completed transferred is 86729. Then let's quickly do this one, the last one. Sorry for delaying you. Using your calculation in B and C, prepare the MB's profits and loss and other comprehensive income statement. Right. So we'll have now MB's income statement. Or you could do with the shortcut method, but as I said at this stage, I can't teach you the shortcut method. Right. For the month of October 2018. Right. We can start with ourselves. Right. We're told that all completed units were sold at a selling price of 80 per unit. There were no opening and closing finished goods. So 80 per unit, they were sold at 80 per unit. So all these goods that were completed, which were 1.1, we sold at 80 per unit. Remember that a unit is so that's 1.1. These are kgs. To convert them into units, then we divide by, okay, maybe let me just say sales. Right, so we're 1,100 kgs. To convert them into units, we would say 1,100. Remember that each contains 500 grams. So divided by 0.5 kgs. What do we get? I think we get 2,200.
Yeah, it is 2,200.
Oh, but anyway, it was given, isn't it? I think we said somewhere that 2,200 units were completed. Remember the 1,100 we calculated when we converted. So 2,200 units at 80 rand each. So we'd say 2,200 multiplied by 8. We get what?
440.
Hello?
440.
440.
Yes, 1,000.
Right. less our cost of sales. Right, considering that we don't have opening and closing inventory of finished goods, our cost of sales will be the cost of the completed and transferred here, the 86. But if we're opening and closing finished goods, we're going to say opening inventory, then we add the cost of the completed and transferred, then subtract the closing inventory. Remember that the inventory that we're talking about is not this one. This one is work in progress. We're talking about finished goods. Here in the profit statement, we include the finished goods because the work in progress will be in the process cost statement there. Right. Then we'll get our gross profit. Right. Less expenses. Expenses will include the abnormal loss.
Yeah, the cells are incorrect.
Hello. Sorry,
Including
sorry.
176,000.
176,000.
176,000.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Our abnormal loss, we have it here, is an expense. Then other expenses, I think we're told that here, MB only uses far and wide to distribute the biscuits to supermarkets, central warehouses. The agreement with far and wide stipulates a fixed monthly fee of 5,000 plus a cost of 100 per pallet transported. Right. And we know that how many units are included per pallet. We're told somewhere here. These units are packed in pallets. Each pallet will pack 48 units. So we can say number of pallets each requires 48. So we can say 2,200 divided by 48. What do we get?
For 5.83.
46. You can't have a quarter or a fraction of a pallet. Is that right?
Yeah.
So even if it was comma 1, we're going to make it 46. Right. So that means our distribution costs right. We know that there is a fixed, which is 5,000. Then we add the 100 per pallet. So we'd say 5,000 plus 100 per pallet, which is 100 multiplied by 46. What do we get? I think 9.6. If I calculate well. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's correct.
Right. Then there was also depreciation, I think. MB's office equipment was bought on 1 August for 130 and immediately brought into use. On this day, the equipment's resale value was estimated to be 10,000 at the end of the useful life. This equipment is depreciated monthly on the straight line method over 5 years. So it's say depreciation of equipment. Right, so we can say 130,000 minus 10,000, the residual value, divided by 5, then we multiply by 1 over 12, considering that we're preparing for a month.
Sir,
Yes,
sorry, my distribution, I came to 9583, which is rounding. Would that still be correct?
What did you round?
Well, I did my sum in Excel where I just said 2000 in brackets, 2200 divided by 48 times 100, close brackets plus 5000, and that equals.
Now the
9.5.
problem is pallets cannot be like a fraction of a pallet. So
we'd have to
such
do
things
we'd
have to
have
be
to do it
rounded.
separately.
Some you have to be rounded, yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thanks.
Because we can't have a fraction of a pallet.
Yeah.
Right. What do we get? What about our depreciation there? Thank you. 2000. So this will be our expenses. Then we get our net profits. So that will be our net profit. So you'd find that even if they didn't ask for some of these calculations, we still needed this figure, the cost of sales. But of course, you could use it with, you could get it easier with the shortcut method, which will not require you to do all these things here, which I will show you by next week. Right? Any questions? Right. If we don't have any questions, I think it's already too late. Very sorry for disturbing. Right, my friends, those who are doing MAC 3701 will meet at 10 on Sunday. For those who are doing MAC 3761, it's optional. Thank you so much. God bless you richly and have a blessed night.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you, sir.